Good morning, friends in Singapore, ABC students, or people around the world if you are listening other places. This is Monk George again teaching about the glance meditation at the end of the Guru Puja. Sui Kim even has, I see Sui Kim even has his mask on. Maybe I should be wearing my mask. Chen Hao graciously reminded me that some people had asked, or mentioned that some people had asked that we do a dedication at the end. And of course, if we do dedication at the end, we should do motivation at the beginning. So just, you know, when people teach Pecha, this kind of text in the monasteries, they usually do very briefly, but the yogis do more elaborately. So we're doing it more like the Pecha style, the text style, like in the monastery. So just very briefly, try to develop the thought that I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, meaning the Bodhisattva Sangha. Due to the merits of practicing the six perfections, generosity, and so forth, and listening to the teachings, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. We'll mention as we get through some of the verses today, the so-called five forces. And one of the forces is the Pempetop, the force of, force of momentum or something like that. And you can think of this motivation at the beginning as kind of like Pempetop in a more limited sense. Pempetop here means the force of making very strong determination not to fall under the influence of self-cherishing thought or self-grasping in one's practice all the time. And here when we make motivation at the beginning, it's more or less the same thing, to try to develop, to take refuge and develop bodhicitta, both the conventional and the ultimate bodhicitta, for the sake of sentient beings. So this prayer at the end of the Guru Puja that was composed by the Fourth Panchen Lama is a very good way to integrate in Lamrim into your everyday practice. If you can use just this prayer alone, you take refuge. Say if you do the 6-session yoga and you visualize the Buddha in front and your gurus and so forth, and after that, after whatever small practices you might do, to do a meditation, a glance meditation on the Lamrim, to go through all the stages. So as you recall, we've talked about, starting at the beginning, there's a verse on relying on the spiritual guide, and that is mentioned, the correct reliance on the spiritual guide, practicing in thought and practice. Relying on the person in thought and practice is said to be the root of the path. We need, just as we needed to go to school to learn how to do algebra or even arithmetic and other things, we needed our mom and dad to teach us how to go to the toilets. And if we want to do pottery, we need someone to teach us. So something that is so much more elaborate and dangerous in certain senses, so important that our path to enlightenment, we certainly need a guide. Then we talked about, the second verse was a combination of recognizing the life of leisure and endowment that we have, Deljor, and joining that with a meditation on impermanence, realizing how this body of liberties and endowments is found just once. And the difficulty of getting it again is very difficult. And is quickly lost means a meditation on impermanence. So this, this verse is the Lama Tsongkhapa's preferred method in the Three Principles of the Path, the famous text that he composed at the suggestion of Manjushri, his spiritual guide as a meditational deity, to join these two meditations together to make it more quick, to make it more powerful. And not to Donden Ningpo Lempa Jingiro, please grant me blessings, to take its meaningful essence. So the example that Atisha gave of the swan that can dip its beak in a pond within which someone has poured milk, cream, and can lead the holes at the bottom of the swan's or the bird's beak, lets all the water out, all the dirty stuff, and is able to hold on to just the essence that's in there of the milk. So like that, we have to be able to take the essence of this lifetime this life of leisure and endowment that is so meaningful. Then we talked about meditation on the suffering of the lower realms in order to take initial refuge. Nensong Dugna Bawe Mejigne, aghast, fearful of the searing blaze of suffering in the lower realms, which meant not only hot suffering, or even the suffering of the coal hells and the Preta realm, the animal realm. We take heartfelt refuge in the three gems, the three rare supreme ones, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So this is the meditation on recognizing the suffering of the lower realms, which is so useful. I mentioned how that is, maybe that's even, for us at the beginning, is even more important than visualizing ourselves as a meditational deity, visualizing ourselves in hell or as an animal, imagining what that would be like. And to recognize that the only thing that can protect us from that is the triple gem, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Actually, all of the meditations on the Lamrim. Lama Zopa Rinpoche told the story once of going to Trijang Rinpoche and saying, "Oh, Rinpoche, please protect me from being reborn in the lower realms." And he said, Trijang Rinpoche said, "Oh, that's the Lamrim. That's the method to protect you from the lower realms." So I remember also at Kopan one time, Lama Zopa, during the course, people had been kind of flippant with him. Some of the very first time they'd come to the Dharma, and they treating him very flippantly. And he said, "If you knew where you were going to be born in your next life, you wouldn't sleep at night," meaning you'd be up all night making prostrations or purifying, doing Vajrasattva, collecting merit and so forth. If you could see where, as things stand right now, due to our karma, our past lives karma and the karma that we've created this lifetime, what little virtue we've created, if you saw that, where you were, on the basis of that, where you were going to be born in your next life, you'd be frantic. You wouldn't sleep at night. Okay. So then there was a verse on essentially, first of all, the first sense of training in the mind of a person of intermediate scope. So the person of initial scope is a person who's able to give up the appearances of this lifetime, the apparent happiness and success and power and so forth, aiming at least and the happiness of future lives. And then the next verse is the developing the wish for liberation, so for renunciation of all of samsara, not just the renouncing the happiness of this lifetime. So this is talking essentially about the Four Noble Truths, Leda Nyonmong Balung Draktutuk, violently tossed amidst the waves and whirlwinds of karma and afflictions, afflicted by the multitude of watery denizens of the three sufferings, the three kinds of suffering, suffering of suffering, changeable suffering, all compounding pervasive suffering. I seek your blessings to develop an intense longing to be free, tardo, Tibetan name, Shukta Kepa Jingilob, from the infinite, from this endless and frightening ocean of existence. So samsara is like an ocean in that it's like being dropped in the middle of the ocean. The boat goes away. You have no way of saving yourself. You need to, it's just endless and it's fearful. It's very frightening and justly so. So that was developing a sense of revulsion for cyclic existence. And then the next verse we talked about Soka Sonra Drawa Koadi. So likening this cyclic existence to a prison. I wonder if you saw, there's a movie with an Italian comedian that was made some years ago about a father in Germany. He's in Italy, he's Italian, and his son, and they're captured by the Germans and put into a concentration camp. And he tries to tell his son all the time that it's just a game. He knows that it's a concentration camp. It reminds me of this verse, Soka Sonra Drawa Koadi, this cyclic existence that is like an unbearable prison. You have no liberty, you have no freedom. You're under the influence of karma and your delusions, karma and afflictions. And to give up the view that he was fostering in this comedy on TV, I think it's called Beautiful Life or something like that, giving up the view, giving up the state of mind, the attitude that views it as a pleasure garden, or some game. And then to grant, requesting blessings from the merit field, like in the Lama Chopa, to be able to practice the three higher trainings, the Labsum, which are morality, concentration, and wisdom, which are the methods. Once you've developed a sense to be free, how do you get free? You have to practice the three higher trainings. So these verses are essential. These meditations up to here are essential in order to develop the higher views of bodhicitta and training the mind and so forth. Because if you don't have a sense of the suffering nature, the unbearable suffering nature of cyclic existence for yourself, you can't really appreciate it, the situation that all other mother sentient beings find themselves in, the great suffering that they're enduring. So then we talked about the next verse, developing compassion, foundation of the Mahayana path, as Chandrakirti says at the beginning of the Madhyamaka Vatara. He prays, even though the text is essentially about, the main topic is the middle way view of emptiness, he praises at the beginning compassion, because it's something that's important, essential at the beginning of the practice, in the middle of the practice, and even at the end when one's nearing Buddhahood. So we talked about how, having contemplated how all these helpless migrators, all these beings that we see around us, how they've been our mother and have cultivated us, taken care of us again and again with kindness. This is talking about, so the kun, how the word all in the first line, having considered how all, this kind of implies the equanimity meditation at the beginning, equalizing them in terms of being friends, enemy, and strangers. Then remembering that they've all been our mother, how they've been kind, and implied in, at least in Mutu Dharmabhadra's commentary, he says it's implied to the third point of developing the responsibility to repay their kindness. Then Dukbe Bula, precious child, looking like a mother looking at a precious child. Precious child means the affectionate love. So what are we talking about? Affectionate love, the fourth element. And then like a merciful mother or a kind mother, that's referring to compassion for her precious child, to develop effortless compassion, or chumin actually means non-manufactured. So it's not something you have to think about. That's really what when the compassion that we have now, if we can develop it, there may be some that rises naturally or effortlessly or without the need to manufacture it through some meditation. But most of our bodhicitta, in our meditations, we have to sort of really create, with some effort and some meditation, we have to use some reasons to develop that compassion and bodhicitta. So this is basically talking about the methods that are prevalent in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras about recalling that all sentient beings have been your mother, and so forth, which is one of the hardest meditations in the Lamrim to make. Then the next verse, Dugnal Tamo Samyang Midoshing. So this is now talking about augmenting those 7 methods. Of the 7 elements of cause and effect, we only talked about 5, leaving off laksam, which is universal responsibility, or something that's an intensification of compassion, where you take the responsibility upon yourself to liberate all sentient beings. And we've left off the actual result of bodhicitta. So that verse was talking about the first 5 elements. Now augmenting that with equalizing, here it says, developing equanimity between oneself and others. So the earlier equanimity was the equanimity between friend, enemy, and strangers out there. Now to develop a sense of equality between oneself and others. So Dugna Tamo Samyang Midoshing, not desiring even the slightest of sufferings, and in the sense that, even if something small happens to us right now, we're so self-absorbed, sometimes we can't think of anything else. We don't like even the slightest of sufferings. And Dela Namyang Choshe Mebani, Dela means with respect to happiness, there's never any satisfaction. So this has the sense of we all desire happiness, and we continually desire it again and again, because it has the nature, samsaric happiness is the nature of not being satisfying. Why is that? Because samsaric happiness is just the diminishing of one suffering, replacing it with another. And while those two are still changing, that suffering is going down, one suffering is going down, being replaced by another, we call that happiness. And when the lesser suffering has become bigger, we start getting, we recognize it as suffering of suffering again. It's called changeable suffering. So because of that nature, there's never any real satisfaction with happiness and cyclic existence. So recognizing that this is the same for myself and all other sentient beings, there's no difference at all. Dagdan Shenla Kepa Yumenshe, Shende Gawa Kepa Jingiro. I grant me blessings to generate joy in the happiness of others. And what Nulchu Dharmabhadra said in his text here, so it's this kind of joy is not the rejoicing which is an antidote to jealousy. So it says, De la rangni misope tatok mepar nisei. So it's not limited to simply a lack of jealousy, which the kind of jealousy that can't bear the happiness of others, but it is an actual developing of joy in the happiness of others, which is what's called Maha Maitre, Jampa Chempo, great love. So that's something we talked a little bit about. So then last time we also talked about the next verse, this chronic disease of self-cherishing is the cause that gives rise to all undesired suffering. And I had mentioned one way of looking at undesired suffering, is there some suffering that's desired? Well, yeah, you could say that we desire changeable suffering, don't we? But undesired suffering is suffering of suffering. So this chronic disease of self-cherishing is the cause that gives rise to all undesired suffering. Having seen that, may we grant us blessings to blame the self-cherishing thought and to hold a grudge against it. This is perhaps if you're listening to Venerable Sangye Khandro's commentary on the 7 verses, I'm not sure where you've gotten in that. One of the verses is to put all the blames on one thing. So the one thing can be self-cherishing, or can be self-grasping, or could be a combination of the two. So having seen that all of this, that the self-cherishing thought is the cause that gives rise to all unsought suffering, I seek your blessing to blame and hold a grudge against it, and to destroy the great demon of self-grasping, Dagzin. So sometimes I remember asking Geshe Sopa at Deer Park in Wisconsin in America, why, at the beginning it's talking about self-cherishing, and then later at the end it says to destroy the self-grasping. So one way of understanding that is that self-cherishing comes about because of self-grasping, which is more fundamental. And until you've destroyed the demon of self-grasping, you can't really totally eliminate, you haven't totally eliminated the self-cherishing. So even the bodhisattvas on the 7th bhumi have not yet eliminated the self-cherishing, because they haven't reached the 3 pure bhumis, the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, where there's no self-grasping at all. So we talked about that. So this is the putting all the blame on one thing. And then the next verse, contemplating the advantages of cherishing others, Manam Chezun de la Kopelo, mentioned last time. So this to me is such a enlivening verse. The attitude that cherishes mothers, manam is plural, doesn't say all, and would set them in bliss, would set them in joy. Like, for instance, at the verses that we say as at the beginning of different sadhanas, to may I free these sentient beings from the ocean of cyclic existence and set them in the bliss of highest Buddhahood, or in the state of a Guru Buddha, or a state of Vajrayogini or Yamantaka or whatever. This is the attitude that cherishes others more than oneself. This is that particular kind of mind, if we can develop that, is the doorway that gives rise to infinite good qualities. All the good qualities, from being able to take refuge and practice the perfections, leading all the way up to enlightenment, all depend upon, by developing this thought that cherishes others more than oneself, would set them in bliss. Even giving up one's own happiness for them is the doorway, the gateway that leads to infinite qualities. So having seen that, asking the blessings of the merit field that we would cherish migrators, even if they were to arise as enemies, wanting to harm us, abuse us, criticize us, beat us, even kill us. We would cherish them more than our life. So I had mentioned, for me, that's a gateway to reading the Jataka tales, where the Buddha, even when the beings that he had helped were, acting as enemies, they'd been traitors, so to speak. They were really willing to give him up for their own happiness. He would still work for their benefits. Sokle Chepa Zimpa Jingilo. Seeing this, I seek your blessings to cherish these migrators more than my life, even if they were to rise up as my enemies. So we talked about that last time. And then we introduced the next verse, which is kind of a condensation. Dorna means in brief or in summary, so it is. Chipa rangdon kona don. Chipa rangdon kona. Dona chipa rangdon kona don. Tubuang shendong bashik sebai. Kyondan yondan yawa topelo dakshin nyamje nuba jingilop. So in brief, childish beings, infantile beings, which the Buddha referred to all beings that were not Arya beings, Arya Bodhisattvas, let's say, work only for their own ends, while the Munindras, Tubuang, Tub means Muni, Wang means Indra. Munindra is an epithet of the Buddha, the Lord of able ones, the Lord of sages. So that's just saying the Buddha works only exclusively for the welfare of others, having with an attitude that has, with a mind that has understood, realized the Yewa. Yewa means the divisions, or it has analyzed the divisions of the faults of one and the benefits of the other. Please grant me blessings to be able to equalize and exchange myself with others. And I mentioned in these 5 decisions that this was talking about the decision to realize that we ourselves are able to do this, to try to develop that particular confidence that we can do this. So there's a quotation from Shantideva. I'm not sure, I think I mentioned it last time, didn't I? That a Buddha's qualities are gained from sentient beings and the conquerors, the Jina, the Gelwa, alike. So why do I not respect them, the sentient beings, in the same way that I respect the conquerors? So this is something that's brought up again and again through the teachings. At the beginning of our practice, we might think it's important to, we've heard that it's more beneficial to make offerings to the Guru, even the pores of the Guru. Have you heard that? Meaning the Guru's attendants and helpers and so forth, than it is to offer to any other sentient beings. But on the other hand, as Shantideva says, the sentient being, we develop enlightenment equally in dependence on the Buddhas and sentient beings. So the sentient beings, that's our main cause for developing bodhicitta, in order to eliminate their suffering. So why do we not respect them in the same way that we respect the conquerors, the Jina, the Buddhas? So this is where we had talked, this is where we had gotten last time. So, right. So, yeah, so one way of understanding that is, you might think that sentient beings who work only for their own welfare, or selfish people, might be very successful in reaching their own end state of their own welfare, whereas the Buddhas who only work for others end up with being sort of like experts in helping others. Whereas the reality of it is that if we work only for our own goals, not only do we not end up with our own welfare, which from the Buddhist, from the point of view of the Buddhist path, our own ultimate welfare is the achievement of the omniscient mind, where there's no suffering, total happiness, everything, no confusion, no worries. People who work only for their own welfare are lucky if they find a little bit of success in this lifetime, which is transient, and using up the virtuous karma of the past, and in so doing, working for their own welfare, often create negative karma for future suffering. So not only do they not find happiness, and certainly they don't, they encounter many kinds of suffering again and again. Whereas the Buddhists don't only find the ability to help others, reach the welfare of others, they also find their ultimate aim, their own welfare of achieving omniscience, omniscient mind, so the omniscient mind. And the welfare of others means the ability to emanate the Nirmanakaya, the emanation body, and the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body, which teaches the Arya Bodhisattvas. So that is the ultimate aim of being able to help other sentient beings. So we talked about that last time. We introduced it, so just a little bit more about that here. So then, Manam Chezung de la Kobelo. Yeah, there we go. So then, where you put next verse, yeah. Rangi Chezin Gupa Kungi Go. Manam Chezin Yondin Kungi Shi. Decher Dakshan Jewe Neljola Nyamna Ningpor Chepa Jingilo. So this is it now, the developing a sort of like a strong aspiration or decision to take this practice of exchanging self and others as the heart of one's practice. Nyamla Ningpor, to enable me to equalize myself. Hence I seek your blessings to enable me to equalize and exchange myself and others. Oh, it leaves off some words there. It says dechir, hence, or therefore, dakshin jewe neljor la nyamlen ningpor chepar jingilo. I can't see it in the English translation there. Hence I seek your blessings to enable me to equalize and exchange myself with others. It actually says is to take, grant me blessings to take the yoga of exchanging self and others, nyamnen ningpor, as the essential practice, as the heart of my practice. So it's interesting, sometimes in this is the Satipatthana Sutra, the sutra about mindfulness, close placement of mindfulness, and other kinds, the Mahavipassana Sutra in the Theravada tradition, various things are said to be the heart essence of the practice. All of these different practices are, it doesn't mean that that's the heart of the entire path, but at a certain point in your practice, to take something as your heart practice. So at the beginning of the text, when we were talking about the life of leisure and endowment, we talked about try to take the essence of this lifetime. That means to use this life of leisure and endowment to, to achieve higher rebirths in the future, continuity of human rebirths, to achieve liberation and to achieve omniscience, and of course the realizations that lead to that, renunciation, bodhicitta, the right view of emptiness, and so forth. So here it's talking about to take at a certain point of our practice when we're trying to develop actual effortless, spontaneous bodhicitta, we are take as the essential practice the yoga of exchanging self and others. So what does that mean, to exchange self and others? It doesn't mean that you become others. You know this, right? What it means is you exchange your attitude, which has considered yourself as important and others as less important, or, to be ignored, or to be even utilized for your own happiness. Exchange that and cherish others more important than yourself. And in so doing, Shantideva mentions in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, I think you've probably studied it with Ken Rinpoche and maybe other people, the various ways to do that. Thinking, put yourself in the shoes of the other person, the beggar, looking back at yourself, saying, oh, look at this American or Singaporean guy or gal, they've got all the good things. Here I am, I'm helpless. They have lots of leisure. I have to work, all the time until I'm totally worn out just for the simplest things. How can they be so callous as to ignore me? So to put yourself in the other person's shoes, looking back at yourself, and that's one of the ways of, always considering from the other person's point of view what they need, what they want. To be able to do that, of course, one of the things that makes it especially powerful is if you have clairvoyance. So we haven't gotten to the meditations that, perfection of concentration and so forth, where you develop the ability to have clairvoyance. But, Geshe Rapton used to say that without clairvoyance, you can't really help other sentient beings. I think I told you the story of Ellen Wallace, who some of you have heard. Maybe you study with him. When he was a monk and a student of Geshe Rapton was teaching the Bodhipratapadipam, the Atisha's text, the lamp of the path to enlightenment, which is a prototype of all of the Lamrims. Atisha, the great Indian saint that came to Tibet. So when he was teaching the section on concentration, Geshe Rapton mentioned how if you had single-pointed concentration, shamatha, fully fledged shamatha, that was like the hot water with which you could make tea and chocolate and coffee and everything. It was like the essential ingredient in developing all of the miraculous powers, such as clairvoyance. And I remember Ellen Wallace saying, raising his hand, said, well, what's the method? And, when you have single-pointed concentration, and Geshe looked at him and he said, develop single-pointed concentration first, then I'll tell you. So maybe that gave Ellen the impetus this lifetime to put so much work into developing single-pointed concentration. Also, because it's said that with single-pointed concentration, it's also one of the essential things to, at least in the Gelugpa tradition, it's said that to develop spontaneous bodhicitta, you need to have single-pointed concentration. So here it says, Nyamlen Ningpor Chepa Jingilob, please grant me blessings to take the yoga of exchanging self and others as the essential practice. Nyamlen Ningpor. So, yeah. So at a point like this, just to think what that would be like to be able to put yourself in the shoes of others, always looking, and of course, if you have clairvoyance, you know what they really need, what they really want. So looking at them and saying, why don't you provide it? So then you provide that, what they need, whether it be material or friendship, material aid or friendship or help in some way or whatever it is, you equalize, exchanging oneself and others. Does that make sense? I wish I could see your faces and see if that's making any sense to you. So Rangdi Chezen Gupa Kungigo, the Rangdi Chezen, the cherishing of oneself, Rangdi is oneself, is the doorway of all Gupa, means all misfortune. Here it says loss. Gupa can mean loss, but misfortune, everything that goes wrong, from suffering, in everything that is undesired. When we talked about undesired suffering, has come about because of essentially having the self-cherishing thought that impelled us to create negative karma. Whereas manam chezen yonden kungishi, the cherishing of mothers, manam, is the basis or foundation of all qualities. So this is kind of reiterating what we saw in the previous verse, but now putting it more to the essential. So therefore, knowing that, once you've practiced that, the previous verse was talking about Dorna Chipa Rangdang Gonadang, in short, childish beings work only for their own end, whereas the Buddhas work only for others. As Shantideva says, there's no need to say a lot. Just look at that alone. You don't need a lot of analysis. Childish beings work only for themselves, and they end up with suffering, continual samsara, heartache, whereas the Munindras, the Buddhas, work only exclusively for the welfare of others. Look where they end up with. They end up with their own aim, the perfection of their own aim, omniscience, and the ability to help other sentient beings perfectly by emanating the two form bodies, the Rupakaya, the two Rupakayas, the Nirmanakaya, the emanation body, and the enjoyment body. So having familiar with that in the previous verse, then in the next verse that we're just talking about now, cherishing, it goes over again, cherishing myself is the doorway of all misfortune, whereas cherishing mothers, it doesn't say my, but that you can understand that, all it doesn't mean other people's mothers, but all sentient beings who have been my mother, cherishing them is the foundation of all good qualities, Yonden Kungi. Therefore, Dakshin Jewe Neljorla, therefore, with respect to the yoga of exchanging self and others, grant me blessings to take it as the essential practice or the heart of my practice. The thing that you're practicing all the time. Like I was saying before, like in the Satipatthana Sutra, it says, this is the essence of all the Buddhist teachings. What does it say in Christianity? What do the Christians say? Christ has said, other than me, I am the way and the light. Other than me, there is no path to the Father, something like that. All of those are essentially saying the same thing. They're not saying that anything else isn't useful or important. It's just saying at a certain stage of your practice, for the followers of Christ, let's say, for them, other than him, other than belief in him, or you could say guru devotion, there was no path to salvation. So here, this is at a very high level to take as the heart of our practice, exchange of self and others. I remember a letter that Lama Yeshe wrote to Genwangdu. You know Genwangdu, who's the boy who is, I think he's in Hong Kong still. I don't know, the last time he was a friend of Lama Usel, the reincarnation of Lama Yeshe. In their previous life, Gen Wangdu was a very good friend of Lama Yeshe's. They both practiced with the same teachers and everything. Gen Wangdu went off and sort of lived as a yogi. Lama Yeshe sort of helping others through the advice of Khyentse Trijang Rinpoche, and the Dalai Lama to start these centers and everything. Gen Wangdu took more of the emphasis of being a yogi, and he made all of these realizations. And they both took as their practice this kind of lojong that puts others' aims more important than oneself. And Lama Yeshe wrote a letter to Gen Wangdu when they were both old and older. And in the case of Lama Yeshe, nearing death, he had a bad heart. And Lama was saying how wonderful it is that they had been able to make use of this perfect human rebirth and put it to its, to the at our level, the greatest good by exchanging self and others. Lama Yeshe talked about that a lot. That's why he was so effective, I think, in helping other people. So to take as the essence of our practice, I'm surprised that the translation here doesn't have that. Hence, I seek your blessings to enable me to equalize and exchange myself with others. It actually says, grant me blessings to take the yoga, the Neljor, of exchanging self and others as the heart of my practice, heart of practice. Nyamnen Ningpo. Ningpo means heart. Por, the R at the end of the por, means as the heart of practice, or the essential practice. So this is, in a sense, this is talking also about beginning to get closer to the sense of laksam, of the seven causes and effect, the 6 causes and the 7th effect. The 6th cause that we didn't talk about yet of bodhicitta, the final effect is, the final element of those 6 causes and effect is bodhicitta. The one before that is laksam, which means the exceptional thought or responsibility, universal responsibility. That's what His Holiness began calling it some years ago when he wrote one of the books called Universal Responsibility. So to take others' welfare is more important than oneself, even to denigrate oneself, to take the loss, like in the 8 verses of Training the Mind, to accept the defeat and give the victory to others and so forth. This is intimating toward that. So now introducing another verse today, the next one that you've heard. We often, when we do the Lama Chopa, we recite 3 times, right? Dena Jesun Lama Tukche Chen, Magyar Droe Digdib Tugnel Kun, Malu Tanda Dagla Minpadang, Dagi Dege Shenla Tangwayi, Drokun Dedan Dempa Jingilo. It says 3x afterwards. So when this text was first composed, you notice right there are 5 lines, right? When this text was first composed, there were only 4 lines. It started with Magyar Droe Digdeb Tugnel Kun and so forth. It left off that first line, Dena Jesun Lama Tukche Chen. So you may have heard this, maybe something you've heard, maybe some of you who have not received teachings on Lama Chopa before may not know. But in Munchu Dharma Bhadra's commentary, he says, Jai Tapukpa, Jai Takpukpe, Mikkor di Shintu Gelchewe Cheer, Sikang Dangpo di Chuk Chopa, Jai Chugi Gelsen la Shune. So he requested this Lama called Jai Tapukpa. So it's Takpupa Losang Damcho Gelsen was a disciple of the Panchen Lama. I think he was a Rinpoche or at least a highly realized being. Takpupa. Ta means horse, I guess. He said to the fourth Panchen Lama who had written this, he was a disciple of the Panchen Lama, fourth Panchen Lama, or you could say the first Panchen Lama. Remember, the author of this text can be called the first or fourth Panchen Lama. He requested him, and he said that this sequence, these 4 lines, are of really very great importance. And because of that, he wanted to add, chuk, would it be okay to add this first line that J. Takpukpa composed, Dena Jesun Lama Tukche Chen, and thus Venerable Compassionate Guru, or it says pure, perfect, pure, compassionate Guru. I'm not sure how it's saying perfect, pure. Maybe this is how they're trying to translate Jesun. Jesun often can just mean venerable, or it can mean, like we say, Jesuma, venerable Tara. You can try to translate both syllables independently. So he wanted to add that line into the 4 other lines. The second, third, fourth, and fifth now used to be the 4 lines of the verse that the first Panchen Lama, or we call the fourth Panchen Lama, had composed, Juki Gelsen. He wanted to add this on because this particular thing was such great importance. It's essentially talking about the meditation on Tonglen that we've been alluding to up till now, but now more explicitly. So what is the Tonglen? The Tonghwa means to give, Lenpa means to take. So it doesn't mean to give and take, give food and take something back, or it doesn't mean I scratch your back and you scratch mine. I do something for you if you'll do something for me. It doesn't mean anything like that. What it means is to take on the suffering of sentient beings, having prepared one's mind by understanding several things, that the disadvantages of self-cherishing, the benefits of cherishing others, to recognize that this can be overcome, this self-cherishing can be eliminated, and we can get closer to the mind of bodhicitta that works for the welfare of others. So to consciously and with the decision to imagine taking Lenpa, the suffering of other sentient beings, all of their obscurations, all of their problems, and imagine that coming up into oneself, that you own it. This is like the extreme case of exchanging self and others. You own their suffering. And you imagine that because of you taking it on, like a mother willingly taking on, if she could, to take on the fever or the suffering of her beautiful child. So out of compassion for sentient beings, love for them, wanting them to be free of suffering, imagine taking that onto oneself, because this is some energy. Like Lama Yeshe used to talk about Tantra. There's some energy, there's some things that can be fuel to the path that we shouldn't ignore. Like in the path of, in the Theravada path, usually we eschew happiness. Any kind of happiness is not to be, even in the beginning of the Bodhisattva path, is something to be avoided, because it can become a distraction and so forth, worldly happiness. Whereas in Tantra, it's like a fuel you can utilize on your journey to enlightenment. So I'm making an analogy here. So this suffering that other people are experiencing, you could utilize it by first of all, you can take it away. Imagine taking it away from others out of compassion, taking on their suffering, and utilizing it to destroy the self-cherishing thought. Imagining you yourself experiencing that consciously with volition, your own volition, your own, willingly taking this on to destroy the self-cherishing thought. And then to give Tonghwa, although the Tonglen, giving is the first word of Tonglen. Here, usually you take other people's suffering first, and then you give them your own wealth, your own resources, your body, if it can be useful. So like the Buddha gave his body to the tigress and so forth that was starving and was about to devour her own babies, her own pups, or kitties, whatever they would be called. What are tigers' babies are called? Gave his body as food so that she could get enough energy to feed her babies and not to devour them. Magir droe digdib dugnel kun. All the suffering, all the digdip means negativities, obscurations, and suffering of migrators who have been my mother or mother migrators. I seek your blessings that all negativities, obscurations, and sufferings of migrator beings, mother migrators who have been my mother, magyar, have been, malu tanda dagla minpadan, may they, without exception, malu, tanda means now, right now, dagla minpadang, may they ripen on me. So one way of doing this is imagining these sufferings coming in the form of black smoke to the self-cherishing thought at your heart chakra. And in so doing, you're imagining all of this coming to you. You don't have to have the breathing part of this yet. That'll come in one of the future verses to mount this on the breath. But you can just do this, imagining all of this coming as black smoke, absorbing this to your self-cherishing thought out of compassion. Seeing the efficacy of this, that it as a dual purpose, it takes away the suffering of your mothers and it puts it where it really belongs on your self-cherishing thought, which if destroyed will get you closer to achieving their ultimate welfare, the ultimate welfare of others, because you'll be closer to enlightenment. Malu tanda dagla minpadang, may they, without exception, all these negativities, that means the negative karma that they've created that are still in their mind stream, the karmic seeds, to dip the obscurations, the diluted obscurations, the obscurations to omniscience, and all their sufferings that they're experiencing now, all of that, imagining coming to you. It mentions in Mutru Dharmabhadra's commentary, also I remember Lama Zopa mentioning this, that when you take on the suffering of sentient beings, when you take on the suffering, the guru is not a suitable object to take the suffering of, because we in the context of these practices, we try to see the guru as an emanation of the Buddha. So there's no suffering that you can take on from them. What you can do is you can take on the suffering of their obscurations, negative karma of their disciples that can prevent that guru from living long. So, you can't take on the short life of your guru. You can take on the negative karma of the disciples, which is preventing, because the disciples don't have the karma to see that guru any longer, the guru may take the aspect of passing away. So you imagine in that way. Malu tanda dagla minpadang, dagi dege shenla tangwayi, by giving, Tonghwa is a past tense of Tonghwa, to giving to others, Shenla, my own dagi dege, my own happiness and virtues. So here, this compressed, it means basically giving your possessions, the ripening effect of your virtuous karma, one of the ripened effects of your virtuous karma, the virtues that are still on your mind stream, the gewa, and the happiness that you have in the causes, the happiness that you have and the causes of happiness on your mind stream, even your body, giving that to others. Dagi dege shenla tangwai, by giving to others my own happiness and virtues. Dro kun detang denpa jingilop. May all migrators, Dro kun, dedan denpa, be conjoined with, grant me blessings to conjoin them with happiness. May they all have happiness. So this is a verse of the initial practice of Tonglen, which is one of the most powerful practices we mentioned before. That sometimes, even without a lot of understanding, when there's great suffering and someone is experiencing incredible problems, suffering mentally and physically, by recognizing that you can utilize this situation to develop compassion for others, that others, say if you have suffering right now, imagine that other people have the same kind of suffering. Like if you have come down with a diagnosis of cancer or leukemia or what's it called, COVID-19 or whatever, there are other people out there not in a state of mind like yours that is able to transform this into the path. You can imagine taking on their suffering, like in this verse, but in the sense that you already have this suffering, right? Let's say if you have COVID or if you have been diagnosed with cancer or something else, imagine that your experience, when you do this in this verse 95 here, Dana Jesun Lama Tuchi Chen, you generally imagine that you take on their suffering and that as a result of taking on their suffering, you are now suffering. When you actually have cancer or COVID-19 or loss, or your spouse has left you, your baby's left you or whatever, imagine taking on the suffering of others and that you're experiencing actually this now. You're actually experiencing their COVID in addition to your COVID, their cancer in addition to your cancer. Then there's not so much self-pitying mind thinking, oh, I'm so miserable. This is unbearable. I have to experience this. You're doing this with volition. You're imagine taking on their suffering, and now you have that cancer. You have that COVID. Imagining in that way, bearing with this, with happiness. Imagine that you've taken on their suffering. Of course, it doesn't eliminate their suffering in general. There are some situations where you can actually experience the suffering of people that you have a karmic connection with in previous lives, where you've created virtue together, dharma friends and so forth. Some rare circumstances, you can actually take that suffering on yourself. But in general, this is a mental exercise to strengthen the compassion, to denigrate, to diminish the self-cherishing, and to generate a sense of cherishing others, to make this, to put it into practice, Tonglen. So sometimes when people have had great suffering and they do this kind of meditation, even if they don't, let's say if they do have suffering, and I remember Lama Zopa Rinpoche talking about someone that had AIDS and who was told about this meditation, and they did this, and in the course of one day, they cried so much, imagine taking on the AIDS of all the other people because they had AIDS. They could imagine this more concretely. Imagine taking on all the suffering. So the other people were free, and I'm experiencing it out of compassion for them. And they said they went to the doctor soon afterwards, and the doctor said they couldn't believe it. They had to do the blood test again, that they had, I think they had AIDS at that time, that they had a complete remission. Either they had AIDS or they had cancer, I can't remember which. So they had a complete remission as a result of this, because this kind of meditation is one of the strongest ways to purify negative karma and to create virtuous karma, to create an accumulation of virtue, the Tonghwa meditation. That's why it's considered so holy. That's why Je Takpukpa wanted to add this extra verse, this extra line rather, the first line that's now of the 5 lines. Je Takpupe. So Takpupa Losang Damchu Gelsen. Why he wanted to add that, because this is of such incredible importance. This is sort of like the secret ingredient in a teacher's Lojong teachings, the special essence, the special sauce, Tonglen, that can bring everything together. Well, it's kind of a culmination of all the other things that are essential. Practicing, developing affectionate love for others, developing compassion, seeing the defects of the self-cherishing thought, the advantages of cherishing others. So when you take on the suffering, you do so out of compassion. And when you give your own happiness and virtues, you do so out of great love, great compassion taking, great love giving. When you're taking out of compassion, so you're happy to take that because you feel the compassion for them. You would like to experience that for them, and you know that has a great utility. That fuel can help to eliminate, to diminish your self-cherishing thought, as you are no longer dwelling on the importance of your own happiness. And when you give to others, also doing so out of great love, and seeing the efficacy of that in developing the cherishing of others is more important than oneself. So, Dena Jesun Lama Tukche Chen, Magyar Droe Digdeb Dugna Kun, Malu Tanda, Dagla Minpa Dang, Dagi Dege Shenla Tonghwa Yi, Drokun Dedan Dempar Jingi Lob. So compassion and love, great compassion and love, utilized in this meditation again and again. Later, one of the verses that are coming up in a couple of verses, when we mount the giving and taking on the breath, and I'll mention again at that time how I think it was Kedrupje, the disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa, in his secret biography. I think it was Kedrupje, it might have been Gyaltsabje. The secret biography of Lama Tsongkhapa said that, the great being who was able to make even his breathing of benefit to sentient beings. So if you can mount these on your breath, when you imagine breathing in all the suffering of sentient beings, holding it in, diminishing your self-cherishing thought, and out of desire to cherish others is more important oneself, and out of loving a state of great love, wanting others to be happiness, sending out your happiness, your body, your merits of the 3 times toward others. So Kedrubje had said how, Lama Tsongkhapa was able to make even his breathing of great benefit for other sentient beings, So that's the reason. So I'm not sure. I think generally in the Tibetan texts of Lama Chopa, although it does have generally, because since the time of the fourth Panchen Lama, when he was requested by this Rinpoche, this Takpupa Losang Damcho Gelsen, when he was requested to add that extra line, and he agreed. He said, okay, yes, you can add that. He gave his permission. Nangwa, he gave that. Since that time, it's had 5 lines, but it doesn't always say 3 times. But there's also there's this tradition of reciting this verse 3 times, as you probably know, as you do the Lama Chopa. So originally it was just maybe recited once, and with just 4 lines, starting with Magyar Droid Dignab Junel Kun. Okay? All right. So then, next verse, just to introduce the next verse. Nutra Digbe Debu Yongkang Te, Midu Dugnal Chartar Babyur Kyang, Le Nyen Debu Zepe Gyurtongne, Kenyen Lamdu Longbar Jingilo. So this, your thing here says points 3 through 7 of the 7-point training of the mind. Well, this one actually here says, what does it say? Dakshin Jewe Mu 72, 73. Oh, so just on and before I go on to that, just so in the Tonglen, and I'll mention again last time, you imagine the suffering and digdib kun, what is it? Magyar Droe, digdib dugnal kun, all of the negativities, obscurations, and suffering of all mother migrators. You imagine all of that in the form of blackness at their heart, and you imagine that is absorbing out of your wish for that is coming to you, that black smoke is coming and absorbs to your own heart chakra, where there's a little lamp of self-cherishing. So, Dagzin also, self-grasping is also said to be a misdirected wisdom. Maybe that's why it says a little lamp, so that you extinguish this self-cherishing and the self-grasping by taking all of that suffering on yourself. And then you send out your own virtues and happiness and body and virtues of the 3 times to other sentient beings in the form of white light that comes to their heart, so that their minds are not imbued with what you have at the beginning, your self-cherishing thought, but they're imbued with all of the good qualities that can lead them to enlightenment. Okay, so sorry, I just wanted to reiterate that. So the next one. Nocho Digpe Debu Yongkangte. So this is in Nuchu Dhammabadra's text, this is saying, Sampe Kenyan Lamdu Kursul, the method, the way to take adverse conditions into the path through contemplation. So this is one of the important points of the Lojong, the 7-point training of the mind. there's so many, in this degenerate age, there's so many things that, if not approached in the right way, we consider to be adverse conditions. You know, your karma ripens. You know, there's a pandemic. If you didn't know, there's a pandemic right now, COVID-19. Might seem like an adverse condition to your practice. You can't get out, you can't do things, you can't make money. Things seem like really dire. Even very smart people are feeling depressed and so forth in the world, you know, taking all of this on. So you need a method to be able to bring adverse conditions into the path, to transform them into your path, to utilize them. So that's what this is talking about. No chu, no is a word that means vessel. Chu means contents. So the vessel means the vessel entire environment, and the chu means the inhabitants therein. So the environment and the beings therein. But basically it says that the vessel and the essence, digbe debu yongkagde, when the vessel world and the inhabitants therein are filled with the fruits or the results of negativity, digbe debu, the results of negative karma. So that means bad things are happening, like epidemics and economic problems, sickness and anger and fighting and politicking and I don't know, you know, everything. When this is, so this can refer to yourself and can refer to the general world. So when it says environment, this can mean your own environment because of the ripening of your negative karma. You know, like for instance, when you, as a result of killing, result of any negative action that we create, there are 4 results, right? Do you know that? I'm sure some of you who have studied with Ken Rinpoche know this backwards and forwards. Others who have not had a chance to study yet, but maybe you'll be inspired by these kind of teachings to go back and study these things. We talk about the 4 effects. So one is called the dominant, dominant effect. So that means that if you have killed in the past, or the environmental effect can be called the environmental effect on the vessel around you. So if you've killed before, you'll be born in a place, or you'll have to experience for some time a space that's very dangerous. You know, danger of being killed and so forth. So our environment, because of the COVID-19, is dangerous. So this is kind of a time when our collective karma of all sentient beings, the environmental effect is ripening of our common karma. And if you have your own problems in your own environment, then what are the other ones? What is this? Dakbo Wangi Debu, that's the environmental effect. Namingi Debu means when you've killed, the maturation effect is to, as a result of that in some lifetime, to be born in the hell realms, or as a hungry ghost, or as an animal. Maybe you usually, oftentimes, because killing is the heaviest, we often think to be born in hell, but it can also mean, you know, you've stepped on an insect or accidentally killed something or half-heartedly killed something. You could be born as a hungry ghost or an animal. So you're born in the lower realms as a result of that. That's the maturation effect of a negative karma. And then there's the Chepa Gyuntun, the effect that's similar to the cause as an action. That's what we call the habitual effect. So that means that in the future, if you've killed in the past, even born as a human being, you have the tendency to easily kill again. Like say a lion has a kind of body that can't subsist on eating anything other than meat. It doesn't have, it almost because of it, it is kind of like an effect that's similar to the cause as an action. So it has to kill in order to eat. So this habitual result is said to be the most negative of all of the results, the most harmful of all the results, because it keeps a continuity of creating negative karma. That's why we take vows. We take vows to help to cut particularly this chebe gyunten, the effect similar to the cause as an activity. So we make a vow not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct and so forth, to try to cut the continuity of that habitual energy. And then the fourth result is the effect similar to the cause as an experience. So that means if you've killed in the past, even born as a human, not talking about being born in hell or in a dangerous place or with a habit to kill again, but actually the majesty of where you live will be your own majesty, and the things around you will diminish. You will get sick. You have the tendency of your medicine not being effective and so forth. So when it says nochu digpe debu yongkangte, when the environment or the vessel, either your own or collectively the vessel environment of all sentient beings, and the essence therein, meaning yourself or collectively all sentient beings, is when that is all filled with the results of negativity. So when negative karma is ripening, your own personal negativity is ripening, negative karma, or the collective karma of all sentient beings, and midu dugnel chartar babyurkan, undesired suffering falls like rain. Sound familiar? Yeah. Oh, suddenly you get a tax bill, your air conditioner breaks down, all sorts of things. Undesired suffering falls like rain, just like. So in a degenerate age, leinen debu sepe gyurtongne. Leinen means bad karma. Debu sepe gyurtongne, having seen these as exhausting. Zepa means to exhaust, finishing off the results, the debu of bad karma. How does he say? Causes to exhaust the results of my negative karma. The word my is not there because it can mean other people's karma also, not just your own karma. Leinen debu zepe gyurtongne, having seen this as a cause, an opportunity to exhaust the results of bad karma, grant me blessings to take these adverse conditions, Kenyan, Langdu Longbar, Jingilob. I seek your blessings to take these miserable conditions take them into the path, to inject them, to utilize them as the path. So in one sense, feeling not upset with your own negative karma ripening on yourself, on your environment and yourself, but seeing that as the opportunity, thinking, oh, my negative karma is exhausting. I don't have to experience this in the future, rather than getting angry, agitated, and grasping for more, say, pleasures and so forth, creating negative karma, just calmly accepting this. But in particular, as Ngultru Dharmabhadra says here and is often told in the text, taking this as an opportunity to do Tonglen, the greater sense, like in the last verse, imagining that all of the suffering, all the COVID-19, that you would be taking that on and others would be free, and exhausting the collective karma of sentient beings, helping you doing, maybe you're doing more than your share, taking on that suffering. Okay, so I'm going to go over this verse next time. I'd introduced 2 verses and then this one, which I'll use as a connection next time. So as I mentioned, Chan Hao had mentioned how some people had asked to do a dedication. So rather than, I'm going to do a dedication first together with us. And then if some of you want to stay for a couple of minutes after that to ask questions, I'll stay a little bit longer. But so imagine we try to do a little motivation at the beginning, try to set a good motivation for this. And the very essence of the teaching, we tried to create a virtuous mind during these teachings, these talks this evening, the various topics. So we've created some virtuous karma, which sometimes for some people in the world, very difficult to create. So to prevent that karma from being used up in some superficial happiness in the future, and to prevent it from being destroyed by anger and so forth, we do a dedication at the end. So imagine, feel some happiness, even rejoice that this evening, or this morning for you, this evening for me, we've sat here and created some virtuous karma. Something conventionally existent, and that will have some beneficial results in the future. So to dedicate it means to make an aspiration, a wish that it not ripen simply in my own happiness in the future, but in whatever way it ripens, may it always become a cause of my continual elevation along the path, my own elevation of my mind, becoming kinder, wiser, more patient as a result of these virtuous actions, up to and including, again, life after life may continue to ripen up into my achievement of enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So due to these merits, may they not simply ripen in some superficial happiness and samsara that's simply changeable suffering, but in whatever way they ripen, may they become the stimulus to my spiritual growth, week by week, year by year, life by life, up to and including enlightenment, so that I can effortlessly and spontaneously work for the welfare of all sentient beings. Like deciding a certain amount of money you set aside, you dedicate it toward your friend's education or your child's education or healthcare or whatever. That's a conventional dedication. And then the sealing that dedication in the emptiness of the 3 spheres to prevent these karma that we've created from being destroyed by anger. Imagine that the karma that we've created does not exist inherently. The goal dedicated to this rolling goal of spiritual development from life by life up to and including enlightenment, that doesn't exist inherently. It's just imputed by the mind. And the act of dedication, joining these merits with those goals, that also it's just a process. You can't find it anywhere. It's just imputedly existent, conventionally, ultimately empty of any inherent existence. Just letting go of all of that. Dwelling in a state of bliss and emptiness. So it's just, well, 11:32 or something like that, 11:31. So those of you who have to go, have a good day, good Saturday morning in Singapore. Those of you who want to ask some questions, I'll stay around. As long as Tonghwa has the time, or one of you.
Yeah. For those who want to ask questions, you can raise your hand so we can unmute you. Okay, we have a question from PK Tam. Yep, you can unmute yourself.
Who is this from?
PK Tam.
Hi, Venerable George.
Hello, PK Tam.
Thank you for the precious teaching. I just want to ask a question which is a bit sidelined. You had mentioned that accidentally we might kill something like the insects and so on, and that would ripen in the future of as a negative karma. I just want to clarify karma done without intention.
Say again?
Karma done without intention.
Karma done without intention, right?
Yeah. Would that be karma done but not accumulated? And hence, the result might not be might not bear the result.
Right. So some karma that we do, that we create without intention, still is negative karma, but it may not ripen in the future if it was not intended. But it can ripen. And you know the famous story of Nagarjuna. You know this story about Nagarjuna? You do?
Which story?
Yeah, right. The story. There are many stories about Nagarjuna. So Nagarjuna had the karma to live many, many hundreds of years, and there was one of his friends was a king that I think maybe one of the kings that he wrote a letter to, one of his books, and the king, the son of that king wanted to become king, but his father, the king, kept on living long life, like Nagarjuna, and the prince who wanted to become king asked Nagarjuna, or he heard that his father, the king, had the karma to live as long, as Nagarjuna lived. So he asked Nagarjuna if he would die, if Nagarjuna would die, so that his father would die, so that the prince could become king. You've heard this story?
Okay, yes, something like that.
So Nagarjuna realized that he had inadvertently killed maybe a cricket or something when he was a laborer in a previous life. When he was cutting grass, he inadvertently sliced through the neck of a locust or a cricket or something. So there was some, without intention. And so this karma was still out his mind stream. It would not definitely ripen, but it could ripen. And so he prayed that this karma would ripen. And he was able, and the only way that he could die was he had to use a big piece of serrated grass, you know, the grass that has a ragged edge, and cut his neck off. So there are some things that we create without intention that will not necessarily ripen, but depending on our mind, maybe with strong wishes, negative wishes or positive wishes, it might ripen, but I think that's what you're referring to, okay?
Yes.
It's still called negative karma.
Right. Yeah, I'm just wondering whether you will be ripened even without the intention. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Without
Thank you.
intention, you've created that, but it is not necessarily going to ripen unless you make some special subsequent causes, either a virtuous mind like Nagarjuna did, wanting to die for the welfare, you know, giving himself for others, or maybe some negative kind of minds can cause those kind of karmas to ripen also. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
No, pleasure.
Do we have
else?
any more questions? Anyone else? Okay, we have one from Violet.
Hi, Violet.
Hi, Venerable, thank you for teaching. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, yes, we can hear.
Okay, good. Okay. Just to clarify, maybe I doze off when you're talking about this. I just want to make sure that I get it correct. You mentioned the first thing is that we need to remove self-grasping before we can remove self-cherishing. Am I correct?
In order to completely eliminate self-cherishing, you have to eliminate self-grasping. So this is a subtle point. Generally, we think that one of the obstacles to developing bodhicitta is self-cherishing. So almost the assumption then is once you've developed bodhicitta, you don't have any self-cherishing, but that's not the case. There's still some remnants of self-cherishing left. And when you get on the higher levels of the bodhisattva path with the bhumis, you know, that is almost completely dormant, the self-cherishing. But the Buddhas, when the bodhisattvas are in meditative equipoise on emptiness, the Buddhas sometimes stimulate them, remind them that they have not yet eliminated the seeds of self-cherishing until they reach the 8th bhumi, very close to Buddhahood. So they remind them again and again to enter into the world and create virtuous karma dedicated to enlightenment and, you know, work for the welfare of sentient beings, not to remain in equipoise on emptiness continually, like the Theravada, the Hinayana arhats. So it's said that the subtle dormant self-cherishing is not eliminated until the 8th bhumi. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much. Because I have doubt when you say that even 7 bhumi bodhisattva still have child cherishing. Okay, now I got it already. It's dormant. The seed is still there. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? From Lian Chu.
Who's it?
Yep, Lian Chu.
Genju? Hi, Genju.
I'll turn on my video.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yes, we can hear you now.
Genju Tan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Hi.
you, Venerable George, and very grateful for your teaching.
Thank you.
I have been reflecting a bit more on the 3 spheres as you taught me since your last visit to Singapore. And today's dedication allows me to reflect a little bit more as you have taught us. Am I correct to understand that in those final thoughts that we have, we are contemplating both the conventional truth and the ultimate truth when we are doing our 3 spheres?
Yes. So you initially, you're imagining the conventional
Yes,
virtuous karma that you've created,
yes,
imagining that, recognizing that and maybe rejoicing in that so that it becomes even more powerful, because by the power of rejoicing in virtue, even your own virtue, that creates more virtuous karma, right? Then you imagine the goal that you're dedicating that to, your own spiritual development, this lifetime, future lifetimes, all the way up to enlightenment, developing all of the good qualities of the path. That's the goal. Karma, the goal. And then the act of dedication that joins this karma, wishing very strongly, may this karma ripen in these ways. That's the act of dedication. So those 3 elements are all conventional truths. They appear to our minds as inherently existent, but they are not inherently existent. They're actually devoid of inherent existence. They're empty of inherent existence. So once you have made the conventional dedication, which is the first part, due to these merits, may these events, may these things happen, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. Then you meditate on the emptiness of each of those elements, the karma that we created, although it appears to our mind, quite cogently, I did these actions, I tried to have some good motivation, I must have created some virtuous karma. That karma that we created is something that exists only as an imputation. Even though it appears to our mind as being inherently existent, it doesn't exist as inherently existent. So you meditate on the emptiness of the merits that you created, the virtuous karma, the emptiness of the goal. So even if we achieved Buddhahood, we might think, oh, I would have like some kind of celestial body, or, even if I didn't have a body, I'd have omniscient mind. That still, to our way of the way that it appears to our mind, still seems to appear as inherently existent. Even Buddhahood is devoid of inherent existence. It's something that we impute to certain circumstances or elements. So to meditate on the emptiness of the goals dedicated to, and then in some ways, maybe the easiest part is maybe not easiest, but maybe easiest, the dedication itself. Joining, this is sort of a process. May these merits ripen in these ways. Where can you find the dedication? The dedication is something we label onto that process of wishing, desiring that these merits ripen in these ways. So that's called meditating on the emptiness of the 3 spheres. So the 3 spheres are these, in this case of dedication, the merits, the goal dedicated to, and the act of dedication that joins the 2. Meditating on each of them individually as empty of inherent existence. So you don't grasp onto the karma, you don't grasp onto the goal that you're dedicated to, you don't grasp onto the dedication itself. And that addition to the conventional dedication, which is just joining, just may these merits ripen this way, meditating on the emptiness of those three prevents the virtuous karma that we've created from ever being destroyed by anger or wrong view or abandoning the Dharma, various ways that virtuous karma can be, even though we've created virtuous karma, it can be destroyed by anger and by wrong view and abandoning the Dharma and so forth. So this, if you were to have an actual meditation on the emptiness of these three spheres, if you were to have a direct realization of that, it would prevent those merits from ever having any danger of being destroyed. So, but even attempting to do that now, perhaps can preserve them better than not. Okay.
Thank you. I've made
Yeah.
progress in my understanding since your
Great.
teaching last year. Thank you on
Thank you.
that.
Okay, Venerable, we shall end here because it's getting very late over for you in US.
Oh, well, that's okay.
It's almost midnight there. Yeah.
It's almost midnight here. So thank you very much. See you next Saturday morning there, Friday night here.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.